I'm Siobhan Duvigneau and I'm your facilitator for today. Today actually marks the end of the series of videos and presentations that form part of our discussion topic over the last 3 days. We've been discussing things related to researchers of the future, the types of capabilities and skills they may need in the 21st century. However, the online discussion we hope will continue on the HIFA-Fr and HIFA platforms over the coming weeks, and we would like to encourage you to join these discussions as they evolve. So back to today's presentation, we have some great program speakers for you today, exploring the topic, how would a shift in research practice impact on the capabilities of researchers in the future? So we're looking at exploring themes that look not least at the challenges of providing access to research evidence, but also looks at ways in which we can strengthen the capabilities of young and early career researchers in order to enable them to think critically and engage critically with the research that's available in the information landscape today. We'll also be looking at other areas which focus on the tools and approaches that can be used to exchange knowledge and share the research or discover it. We're also going to look at ways in which educational approaches could be improved to not only increase the learning outcomes, but also, as I say, to help shape those critical thinkers and reflective practitioners. And many of our speakers will be speaking to this theme today. So let's commence with our presentations. Our first speaker is Sophie Marsden. She's the Program Manager and E-Learning Officer on a number of projects, one of which I believe is Arcade, but I'll hand over to you now, Sophie, so that you can begin your presentation.
Hi everybody, you should all now have my presentation on screen, I hope. So thanks for joining me today for this short presentation. As Siobhan said, my name's Sophie Marsden and I work mainly on communications and e-learning at the Institute of Development Studies. Today I wanted to talk to you about how we can use digital technology to increase research capacity. I currently manage a project called Arcade, which aims to do just this in the field of health research. So I will be offering some examples of what we do in this project, and I will talk about some of the learning that has, that has emerged from the project. Okay, so I wanted to start with this image first. What does it say to you? It's taken from a video of a TEDx talk in Sydney a few years ago. It was used by a group presenting the world's first ever real-world trending engine called mHealth. This technology takes snippets of conversations spoken by the live audience from the theatre using dozens of directional mics. It then generated an interactive visualization of the conversations that were happening in the theatre. It is basically bringing information to life through digital technology. If you'd like to hear more about this, there is a link in the corner of the slide which will take you to the presentation itself. For me, both the image and the product say a number of things. It captures the evolution of technology. It suggests how we use and engage with this technology, and perhaps most importantly, it indicates that the way we engage with information through these technologies is changing. How can we apply this to the research? How do we use digital technology to access, develop and utilise research today? Of course, all the traditional sources and ways of accessing knowledge are still widely used. We still rely on books, journals and articles in print. We still visit libraries and universities to access this knowledge. But now, if you have a mobile device and an internet connection, you can access many of the same resources and many more online through one device, easily and at speed. New technologies have also put paid to the idea of desk-based research. No longer are you confined to finding information in a library or at a desk through a computer or from a book. Instead, you can access information anywhere and at any time, again, as long as you have a mobile device and an internet connection. You're also no longer confined to library opening hours, or if you're a student, you're not confined to time in class. Instead, you can access a wealth of information at a time that suits you. Digital technology and the internet have also dramatically increased the number of people that have access to information and research. The amount of people that own a mobile device, whether that be a mobile phone, a laptop or a tablet, has and is continuing to increase. When combined with an increased internet coverage, this means more information is available to more people. When you combine these qualities that digital technologies have, how can we utilise them for increasing research capacity? Well, let me show you what we have done in the Arcade project. So just a little bit about the project first. There are actually two Arcade projects, both are regional capacity building programmes and each with a health research focus. Arcade HSSR was based in Africa and the focus of the work was based on health systems, whilst Arcade RSDH is based in Asia and the research focuses on social determinants of health. Both were 4-year projects which were funded by the EU 7th Framework Programme. Arcade HSSR came to an end in March this year and Arcade RSDH will end at the end of this month. The projects included 16 partners in total across Asia, Africa and Europe, with Karolinska Institute in Sweden coordinating both projects. The main aim of the project was to use educational technologies to develop health research capacity across Asia and Africa. The main focus centred on teaching and training young researchers, and with this in mind we developed a suite of online learning courses, blended learning modules and joint teaching programmes for use primarily in the two regions. There was also a focus on institutional capacity development to support these teaching and learning initiatives. So this centred on strengthening the education services, the financial and administrative management, the research uptake capacity, and how people built and developed networks. I'm now going to outline some of the products we have, and some of them are still in development as we finish for a November deadline. Okay, so all of our teaching content is hosted on either an institutional online learning platform or through the central open course repository. This is an online learning platform developed using Moodle software and hosted and managed centrally at the Karolinska Institute. All of the content that we offer is offered open access and has been released under a Creative Commons license. So this means it's free for anyone to use as long as they give appropriate credit to the original author and that they do not profit from using the content. The learning modules have been designed for both students and teachers with the idea that they can be used either for self-study or can be taught as part of a blended approach which combines face-to-face teaching within an institute and using the online content from the platform. The topics covered by the online learning modules was developed in line with a needs assessment that we carried out in the first year of both projects. So this identified the gaps in available teaching and research around the two broad areas of health systems and the social determinants of health, and from that we developed a curriculum of courses. Okay, so just very briefly what's included in a learning module. Well, we've got video lectures, course overviews, presentation slides, reading lists, as well as online assessments and exercises, and links to additional relevant online content. One of the major successes of the Arcade project was the joint teaching programmes that were established between regional partners. For example, Makerere University in Uganda, Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and Karolinska Institute in Sweden established a joint PhD programme, so students were able to benefit from the research specialisms in both the faculty and teaching programmes at each of the universities and receive a joint degree. We also developed shared teaching of blended courses across the institutes. So this meant that online teaching was shared across the partner institutes, enabling students from both institutes to benefit from the teaching. The online content and the OCR was crucial in enabling this blended learning approach, and whilst there were some teething issues, there was also a high level of engagement and positive feedback from the students. So Arcade was something of a test project in terms of using digital technology to create engaging e-learning content on health research. None of us would have professed to have been experts in this area, and I still think we wouldn't because there's so much more to learn. But alongside online modules, IDS has experimented with using e-publishing software to create an online resource on implementation research on health systems. This has been edited and mainly authored by Dr. Henry Lucas, but it also includes contributions from experts in the field. And it's made up of 10 chapters which guides a student through the basics of implementation research. So there are a number of qualities that the e-publishing software has that print publishing does not, which were behind our decisions to choose this format. Firstly, the software enables us to easily update the content, and we are also looking into creating a way that readers could contribute to the content. So this would be effectively like a wiki. Secondly, we are able to add multimedia such as video, audio, interactive figures and graphs and tables and online links to bring the content to life and add greater depth to the resource. Finally, the resource is downloadable by chapter and as a whole document. It's downloadable either as a PDF, which is obviously a smaller file size, allowing for those with low bandwidth to download the resource, especially if you're just choosing one chapter. Or it's also available in an EPUB 2 and EPUB 3 file format, which is a larger file size, but it means that you have much more variety in terms of the multimedia content that you can include. Okay, so another e-learning product that we are developing that aims to build professional skills really instead of the more topic-based academic online courses. So there are a series of how-to instructional videos. So these professional skills building sessions focus on things like communications, policy, research methodology. They're topics that can be sometimes neglected in the capacity building activities within the field of research. We felt it was valuable to kind of add these short instructional videos to the kind of arcade curriculum, if you like. We're still in the process of finalising these products, but we hope to produce guides on Twitter, writing policy brief and blogs shortly, which will be shared via social media. Okay, so now I've talked you through a few of the products that we've created. I'd like to share some learning that we have generated from both of the arcade projects. So if we take a look at some of the good points, what did digital technology offer to us? Digital technology and internet connectivity can and does increase access to a wider range of information and knowledge to more people. Within e-learning, for example, people in one country can access teaching content in another country, therefore having the potential to increase the amount of high-quality teaching available to a wider range of people. Within Arcade, we were able to teach across institutes, share expertise, and also share teaching resources. Digital technology also allows you to create new forms of engaging and interactive content. Many students responded positively to using online content in the teaching programs, and different formats can suit different students as they learn and engage with content differently. Instructional videos are now hugely popular online content now. You only have to look at the success of YouTube, for example. Producing this type of content for a research capacity building purpose is a new and innovative way to engage with the next generation of young researchers. Finally, connectivity. Digital technology allows you to connect through time and space boundaries, meaning that as long as you have an internet connection, you can engage with others and access online content at the click of a button. However, I would in no way suggest that technology will magically solve all of the research capacity building needs that exist. In fact, digital technology presents its own new set of challenges. The number of mobile phones surpassed the number of people on the planet in 2014. Gadgets like tablets, smartphones and not so smartphones are multiplying 5 times faster than we are, yet there still exists a digital divide. This is the gap between those that have access to information and communications technology and those that don't, or those that have a restricted access. This can instead have the reverse effect of reinforcing an information deficit. Bandwidth and connectivity issues are part of this digital divide. They are a common problem faced by research institutes and researchers in low and middle income countries. This was highlighted by some of the partners in Arcade, and these institutes had to invest both time and resources into developing their IT capacity and capabilities within their institute. Quality of e-learning content is increasing alongside the development of new technologies, as are the skills of those developing the content. However, just because teaching is made available online, this doesn't give any guarantees about the quality, the content, or the level of engagement that the materials generate. MOOCs, for example, have a particularly high dropout rate. So, overall, e-learning initiatives and approaches are still in their infancy, and their value needs to be tested and retested against traditional face-to-face teaching approaches. The same goes for using digital technologies for research capacity building exercises. it is clear that e-learning cannot and should not replace traditional face-to-face teaching, but there is added value to using online content. We concluded, for example, that a blended learning approach was most effective, which combines face-to-face teaching with online content. Okay, that's it from me. All that's left to say is a big thank you for watching, and if you're interested in any of the products or ideas I've talked about, please get in touch.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for a really informative presentation. This is the first time I've seen your outputs from the arcade program, and I must say they're very exciting. I'm going to open the floor now, and I invite individuals to raise their hand and ask a question. I'm sure there may be, or I hope there may be questions out there that you're particularly interested in. While we wait, I was wondering, Sophie, whether you could elaborate for me. What we're experimenting with in particular in the Aura program is the use of videos, and as you alluded to in your presentation, use of YouTube and and the use of mobile phones maybe to access YouTube has meant that content is available to individuals in a way that it hasn't been before. But what we're noticing amongst our partners is that even though we make video content available, that at times this isn't something that they could take advantage of. And I was just wondering whether you talked about some of the challenges that you encountered in the program, or you called them teething issues. I just wondered whether you could comment on that and how you make the video content available in different formats, for instance as podcasts or transcripts, to enable people to access the information and still benefit from the learning.
Yeah, sure. Yes, there were teething issues. I say teething because I think we solved many of them. Some of the kind of main issues, especially when we were running the joint teaching programs across institutions, were around bandwidth and connectivity, as I mentioned. I mean, that's very difficult to solve. The server at an institute has a certain amount of bandwidth, so you can't get around that. But what you can do is make content available in formats that require less bandwidth. So obviously video does take a lot of the file size is large and it takes a lot of bandwidth to play the videos, but we made sure that, say for example, the lecture videos were also available in a PowerPoint format and also an audio podcast format, which meant that they were obviously smaller, had a smaller file size and were more likely to play in low bandwidth settings. We also actually shared and downloaded material in institutes, so that the materials could be used in live sessions without requiring bandwidth. Obviously this required some logistical arrangements, but we had a lot of kind of workshop sessions and consortium meetings where we could share content like that. So I think it was downloading the content and then uploading it to individual computers. So yeah, I mean, the other kind of issues around video that we came across were how long video content remains engaging for. For example, a teacher could give a 2-hour lecture in face-to-face, using a face-to-face approach, and that would still be engaging, obviously, because you'd be in the room. But on a video, you can't watch a video for 2 hours and just have slides in front of you. You just wouldn't stay engaged. So we basically broke up those long lectures into much shorter video lectures when they went online. And we found that the students responded much more positively to this.
That's fascinating, actually. Some really great tips there. Keep it short. And also, I really liked your idea of storing local copies of the videos to overcome the restrictions in bandwidth. So thank you very much, Sophie, for your presentation. I would encourage you all to contact Sophie, in particular around the ebook, which looks really interesting. When is the launch date for that, Sophie? Or has it been launched?
There is a version online, but we're trying to finalise the multimedia content. So we're going to be launching it in line with Health Systems Global, which is in November, so hopefully by summer.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. I need to move on now to Linda Waldman. Thank you very much. She is a research fellow in the Health and Nutrition Cluster and also a colleague of Sophie Marsden. And I believe she is going to speak next. So over to you, Linda.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much for this opportunity to talk today. I'm also going to talk about how a shift in research practice can impact on the capabilities of researchers in the future. And I'm going to do this by focusing on two things. I'm going to talk firstly about an online course, which is one of the arcade courses that Sophie has just been talking about. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about some research being undertaken in Bangladesh. Both of these two examples are linked to digital technology and health. Okay, so talking more about an online course. We decided to do a course entitled mHealth, Health Systems and Development. And we took this on as an opportunity to learn more about new technologies and what this might mean for research and teaching. So this course examines mHealth, which is really talking about mobile phones and other portable digital devices for health purposes. So it examines mHealth in relation to health systems and development. And it asks how mHealth fits into health systems in low and middle income countries, looking particularly at issues such as regulation, politics, policy, knowledge, gender relations, and so forth. And it tries to examine change and transition by trying to understand how innovation is being used and what pathways of change might be taking place. In producing this course, I wanted to bring together all my lecturing experience and bundle it into this course and use it to make this course a really good product. So we started off with 6 lectures, which is perhaps a small number of lectures, but we had reasons for doing this, including the fact that I wanted to make them as good as possible. And as Sophie has already mentioned, we quickly learned that we couldn't just film ourselves giving a lecture to our students and put it online. So my expectation in developing this course is that these core lectures will be the most utilized part of the course and will be the things that people turn to first and probably most often. But even though this is an online course and one which people will do independently and in self-study, I wanted to give it a feel of a university course. I wanted it to feel to people doing this course as though their lectures were embedded in other aspects of learning. And in order to do that, I tried to give as much complementary material as possible. So there are essential readings, there are additional readings structured around topics. There's a range of different kinds of exercises that people can do. There's some model answers, and there's some expert views linked to the course. And it remains an open-ended question how much these aspects of the course will be used or not. So why do this? Why do a course on mHealth, and why think about it in relation to our work? Well, as I said initially, I wanted to do this course partly for my own learning about capacity building and how new technologies can help us think about this. But there were other reasons as well. To start doing this course, I started by both looking at what mHealth courses were available online and doing a lot of online courses. And what I found was that a lot of the mHealth courses focused on the technology, on the mHealth intervention itself, or on information systems, informatics, how digital technology can help you generate information. Very few of these online courses examine questions relating to development issues, such as poverty, such as what low and middle income contexts might mean in relation to mHealth, such as questions of politics or power relations and things like that. And in addition, very few of these courses looked at sociological theory in relation to mHealth. So we wanted to bring to bear some of the sociology that underlies things like regulation, policy, behavioral change, gender, and knowledge. A lot of these kinds of things were largely absent from these courses, and really basic questions like whose knowledge counts, whose knowledge might be trusted, were not part of these courses. So that was our intent. In order to do this, we faced, or certainly I faced, a steep learning curve. We had to think about how to pitch a lecture. as Sophie suggested, we moved into 3 10-minute slots rather than a 2-hour marathon. I had to learn how to talk to an imaginary audience. We had to learn how to make the course widely acceptable. We had to learn about Creative Commons and copyright. I had to learn not to put too much text onto my PowerPoint slides. So we had a lot to learn as we went along. There were also a number of challenges that we had to face. I certainly underestimated the amount of work that was involved in producing a course like this. I also underestimated how hard it would be to get my colleagues to commit to an actual recording date. When you teach in real life, there are a lot of students and the lecture starts and you're forced to walk into the lecture room and give the lecture. When you set your schedule and plan a time to record a lecture, what we found was that many people cancelled and said, no, I can't do it this week, I'm not ready, maybe next week. So that was a real challenge for us. And there are still questions remaining about the revisions that we can do to the course and the lifespan of a course of this nature. We'll be testing the course next year, between February and March next year, and we're very excited to see how that turns out and what kind of feedback we get. And we're also already starting to explore how we might think about this course as a mobile phone course rather than a computer or internet course, in order to allow access to those people who use the mobile phone to access the internet. Underlying this course was a research project which really investigated how people used ICTs to find health information in Bangladesh. We were interested to know how poor people were changing their ways of trying to find health information because of this new digital landscape. And we were really interested to know if things like changing ICT infrastructure, changing access, changing policies might enable poor people to better access health information, and if they could find ways to do this. So this is a really complex issue, and it was one about which not much was known. So we chose to tackle it in a very interdisciplinary and mixed method way. So we had quantitative surveys, qualitative interviews and focus group discussions, we had transect walks, we had a range of other qualitative methods that we planned and used. We started, and it's also very interdisciplinary. So we have engineers on this project, anthropologists, nutritionists, doctors, and development specialists. And we do all work together in a very collaborative way. Now, the whole area of mHealth in Bangladesh and elsewhere is a very new emergent area for research. In Bangladesh, there's loads of projects that are coming on board. Projects such as Mama, which is for pregnant mothers, is very well known, where they receive health messages through their mobile phones. There's 6 different mobile phone companies, each of which has its own health helpline, and so each has its own mHealth aspect to it. There are lots of NGOs and other government initiatives and projects. So there are loads and loads of pilot projects. There are lots of very big ambitions, and there are lots of reports of very positive outcomes. So there's enormous potential and enormous opportunities for change in the mHealth environment. And that has very significant implications for poor people. And at the same time, there are a lot of gaps that exist in policy, in practice, and in social science research. And in our project, we wanted to try and explore some of these gaps in a little bit more detail. We started off by trying to apply our holistic and analytical methods in this digital age. We started off by doing qualitative scoping studies. So we visited people and spoke to them in their homes, in their places of work. We spoke to key informant stakeholders and others about mobile phones. And we learned a lot. We learned, for example, as we were told frequently, that everyone in Bangladesh, even the beggars, have mobile phones. We were told, and we were constantly reminded, how strongly mHealth and digital health was being supported by the Bangladeshi government. So in these interviews with about 46 people, we explored all sorts of dynamics in relation to mobile phones. And that qualitative research, that scoping work, then fed into a survey, a quantitative survey of 2,500 odd people in urban, peri-urban and rural areas. In doing that survey, we used digital technology to do the survey, and that was an amazing innovation for us. So the survey happened very, very quickly, and within a month we had early data available to us, much, much quicker than had we done the survey manually on paper and had to feed those results into the computers. As soon as a household was surveyed, we could already begin to see the data, and we could watch it coming in as the survey was being done. So that was really, really interesting and really helpful to us. And what we found doing the survey was that people were using multiple SIM cards. For some young men, up to 7 SIM cards, which they were using to manage different relationships and to take advantage of different offers being made by mobile phone companies. We found that people had an incredibly sophisticated knowledge of the costs and the contracts that they had and how to use their phones to make the best, to the best advantage. So we found that people were deliberately allowing their contracts to expire so that the mobile phone companies would give them a new special offer at discounted rates, things like that. So that was all really, really interesting. Having done that, we then did the survey to try and get a sense of what was happening quantitatively and how many people were using mobile phones for health information seeking. And we were really surprised by our survey results. We found that actually very, very few people were using their mobile phones for health information seeking. So that led us to go back to our research question and think about it again and to say, well, why is this? Why do we have so few people actually using their phones when our qualitative work seemed to suggest that people were very sophisticated about their phones? And we know that health and access to good health is a big issue in Bangladesh. So we then followed this up with additional research, trying to find out more. And in this additional research, we targeted very specific categories of people that we thought might be using their mobile phones differently. So we did another quantitative survey of 800 college students, and we did qualitative work with college students, with garment workers, with particular categories of people where we thought they might be using their phones in different kinds of ways. So in doing this research, we had a couple of challenges which are particularly interesting in relation to the question about digital technologies and how digital technologies can shape the capabilities of researchers in today's era. So the first was timeline challenges. Our first survey was done in 2012. And as I said, the results came in very, very quickly and we could see what was happening. And the digital world moves very fast. But academics don't move very fast. And despite all being very committed to this project and all working in an interdisciplinary way, it took us a long time to process the data and to move on from it. So in a sense, collecting the data was quick, but analyzing the data, making sense of it, and making decisions was a lot slower. And in part, that's because in an interdisciplinary project, we all only have small bits of time to work on the project, and that slows down our analysis. It also means that making comparisons between the first survey in 2012 and the second survey in 2015 are very difficult, given the rate of change in digital technology. We also faced challenges in how we asked our questions in relation to health information. So in the first survey, we asked people, and these are not the exact words, but the gist is, we asked people, do you use your mobile phone for health information seeking? And the answer was largely, no, we don't. When we did qualitative interviews with college students, we said, do you use your mobile phones for health information seeking? And again, the answer was largely no. But when we asked, do you use your mobile phones for sexual health information? The answer was more generally yes. And in the second qualitative phase of work, where we were doing interviews with young people, we asked them, what do you use your phone for? And the answer there was, we use it for skincare, we use it for diet, we use it for fitness. And that raises all sorts of questions about whether this is health information seeking, whether this is lifestyle and fashion. How do we consider and think about this kind of data in health in digital technology? So there's a really big push nowadays to think about and to use and to analyze readily available digital data. but we're also very interested about data that is about how people use their digital devices. So I would warn us against being too seduced by what's available online, and to remember to focus on the users and think about why people are using digital technology and how. So we found in our research that people were using their phones very creatively. They weren't just using their phones to look up health information seeking, but rather they were using it to contact family members or other individuals who could help them make a personal connection to a doctor or a particular healthcare providers. Now, again, there's an awful lot known about the digital divide, and we could expect, and we did expect, to find that women were largely excluded from mobile phones. But actually, we found much more interesting things. We found that when we looked at older forms of technology, such as television health programs, that women were also the most excluded from that category of information. And we found a real distinction between younger women and older women, both in terms of mobile phone ownership, in terms of skill, and in terms of health information seeking. Now, generally, one assumes that one should be able to trust the healthcare provider, but what does this mean when the provider is online and when it's not obvious who this may be, or whether the information or the products being provided do or don't have medical and scientific justification? A lot of that is obscured when looking for information online. And what we found in Bangladesh is that most people tended to trust television adverts linked to health issues rather than online technology, because this was a source of information that they understood to be controlled by the government, and they trusted that the government wouldn't allow untrue information to be disseminated. So that was more trustful than ICTs and online searching. But what does it mean when we talk about trust and health information seeking, when we realize that most college students are getting their health information from social media sites like Facebook? And this health information is communicated through a system of likes and dislikes and news feeds, rather than through the conventional systems that we would expect in health and in health systems. So that's a very brief overview of what we've been doing and what I've been doing on this work. I really would like to thank the organizers. I really welcome this opportunity to share some of this research and online learning with all of you. And I would encourage all of those who are interested in this work and who would like to follow up to get in touch with us. So on the next slide, I'd just like to say thank you and give you my contact details. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Fascinating findings in your research. Can I just check, is that published yet, or is it still, is it halfway through the process? Where are you with your research activities currently?
Thanks, Siobhan. Some of it is published. We have one article published, and we're working on several others. So after this session, I can give you the reference to the one article we've published already, and hopefully we'll be able to share more later on.
Yes, thank you. That would be great. I should imagine that would be very interesting to our participants and others who are engaged in this conference. I'm opening the floor again for individuals to raise their hand and post or present questions. In the meantime, I had a couple of questions myself. You talked about the steep learning curve in developing educational outputs using technologies. I was just wondering, how long did it take you from start to finish to develop the position of courseware that you worked on?
That's a really interesting question. I think I'd say 8 months, maybe even a little bit longer. Much longer than I had anticipated.
And how do you see it being different, if at all, when you move into a mobile environment?
Well, lots of things are going to affect it. One of the things that's really going to be different is how we present information, because it's got to be read on a really small screen. And we're also particularly interested in feature phones rather than smartphones at this point in time. And that raises questions about how you will read essential readings, for example. How you're going to present that kind of information. So we're busy exploring this and trying to come up with answers, but we haven't yet started to do that. We haven't yet come up with any answers.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's quite a challenge, given that you're focusing on feature phones rather than smartphones. As yeah. You're quite right, feature phones seem to be more prevalent in lower income and middle income countries. Or one final question actually that relates to the distinction that you observe between young and older users of technology. I wondered whether you could just unpack that for a moment and explain some of the distinctions in the things that you saw. I know that you talked about exclusions, but I was just also wondering whether there were any other patterns of behaviour or use that you observed.
We used 33 as our cutoff age between young and old, which was slightly randomly chosen. In our college student survey, we stopped that at about 24. In our overall survey, we used 33, and I think a lot more familiarity with young people with mobile phones, incredible versatility with using them. A lot of older women really only use mobile phones to make calls to, often they're in their natal families, their own parents and their own brothers usually. We also found that young people very, very connected with Facebook. We interviewed some young men who had 300 Facebook connections, most of them people they actually knew. Again, we did interview older women who had a few Facebook connections, but far smaller numbers and far less intensive use of Facebook.
I'd like to thank you for your contribution today. Both you and Sophie were very informative and give us some food for thought on how to use technology to not only enrich but make our capacity development programs accessible and usable.